cell phones.
Good evening. Welcome to the conditional use hearing for PREIT, the Pennsylvania Real Estate Investment Trust Company, for Wednesday, January 24th, 2018. And may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Myers?
Here.
Roski?
Here.
Rothman?
Here.
Zito?
Here.
Sanchez?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Schreiber?
Here.
Hecker?
Here.
Spiegelman?
Here.
Davey?
Here.
Gillespie?
Here.
Capone?
Here.
Bowman? Klein?
Here.
Luther?
Here. May everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on the applicant, and first to speak would be Mr. Gamble.
I believe Tyler's going to make an opening statement.
Okay. The floor is yours, sir.
Everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Could you pull the mic closer to your mouth, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Holland. I'm strategy Reverend Stevenson Young, counsel for the applicant. First, I just wanted to start off by introducing our team that we assembled here tonight. We're going to hear from a number of people who are going to speak to various aspects of this application. First, I would like to introduce Mark Gamble. He's the Vice President of Development for PREIT, who's the applicant. We also have with us tonight Romaine Crawford. She is the General Manager of the Willow Grove Mall. We also have Joe Harvard, the Head of Real Estate for Studio Movie Grill, who is the tenant, the operator of the movie theater. And ironically, our traffic expert is late right now, running a little late. So when he shows up, he will also testify, but his name is Joe DeSantis. So to give a brief overview of the project, as you're all well aware, in the district in which the mall sits, a movie theater multiplex is a use which requires conditional use approval from yourselves. So we're coming before you tonight to present our application and advocate on our behalf for this conditional use. So as you'll hear this evening, I believe our application covers, the application that we previously submitted covers all these points, but you'll hear tonight testimony from the folks that I introduced previously. And we believe our application will show that, number one, the conditional use as proposed is consistent with the goals of Abington Township's comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the spirit of the district in which the mall sits. It will not create any detriment to properties in the immediate vicinity of the mall, and it will be investment in the township. Furthermore, the applicant certainly agrees to comply with any laws, regulations, or ordinances that would affect the proposed use. So with that, I'm going to call our first expert, who is actually Mark Gamble. I'm going to ask him a series of questions that will help to demonstrate all of the points that I just mentioned.
Do I? Okay. I do. Mark Gamble, spelled G as in golf, A-M-B-I-L-L.
Mark, can you just reiterate that everything I've said so far is correct and accurate?
Yes, it is.
And can you just give your position with PREIT, your address, and your professional background?
I'm Vice President of Development for PREIT. My address is 200 South Broad Street and in downtown Philly. And my background is, please forgive me, and no offense, Tyler, I started out as a lawyer, as a land use lawyer, corporate lawyer, and then moved into real estate development with several companies such as Simon, the owner of KOP, and some other malls. I also worked on the retail side for Macy's for 6 years, and I'm obviously intimately familiar with the mall from that standpoint. Have been a real estate developer for over 20 years.
Great. Now, can you just give a brief overview of the project? Be sure to specify things such as timeline, hours, parking. Maybe give a brief overview of what a studio movie grill generally entails for those that are unfamiliar.
Okay. As you know, the penny box at the mall has been vacant for some time, And it is our intent, obviously, to bring in Studio Movie Grill to fill a part of that box. And if you're familiar with the conformation of the box, it's 3 levels. And on the top levels, I'm sure you're familiar, is Cheesecake Factory. And what we're talking about doing is putting Studio Movie Grill on essentially floors 1 and 2 of the box. But what that will entail is us cutting the floor between 1 and 2 and making structural improvements to solidify the box. And then, as you no doubt aware and been in movie theaters, the theaters are very high cube, 30 feet or more. And so what we're going to do is, again, cut the floor out, and we're going to make high cube theaters. They're going to be 11 theaters, 1,100 seats. They're in the main parking field. May I stand? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Just pull the mic to you.
Pull the mic to me.
Thank you.
In the main parking field, which is the north, it's essentially northwest, and I know you're all familiar with the mall. This would be Old Welch, and then the building in the back. The parking in the back would be the parking for the primary parking for the movie theater. 750 spaces, which is more than adequate to handle the Studio Movie Grill and Primark and the other users in that sector of the mall. We also fully anticipate folks that don't want to partake of the food offerings for Studio Movie Grill might want to go to Cheesecake Factory. And again, I talked to Commissioner Luker earlier. We're endeavoring to backfill the Bravo space, I think, with another restaurant. That, don't hold me to that, but I think that's a really good use. So we could see people parking up here, eating, and then escalating down to the movie theater. The lobby of the movie theater will be on floor 1. It will be on the bottom floor, and essentially that parking field that I showed you is right out here, and you would come in this way and you would escalate down, and then this is the lobby of the theater and also the restaurant. The interesting thing about Studio Movie Grill, and we all know, we've all been in movie theaters from time to time, and you know the curation of food offerings has gotten better in movie theaters. You know, it's not just the popcorn and sodas anymore. Now they have wine and they have hamburgers and hot dogs and things like that. What makes Studio Movie Grill unique is it's more of a restaurant, and Joe can speak to this. It's more of a restaurant than it is a movie theater, although obviously the primary focus is Studio Movie Grill, having the theater as the driver, but they view it as much as a restaurant as a movie theater. But again, you'd escalate down, and then here's the box office, and you buy your tickets. If you haven't done it online, and Joe's going to talk about that as a real benefit. I think we've all probably done that, gone online on our cell phones or whatever, and ordered tickets and gotten them with the little QR code or whatever. And then you go in and you see your movie, and you can also order food in the movie theater and have it delivered to your seat. So it's really a really cool concept.
You might want to just stay up there.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh, or
That's fine.
yeah. So that you can,
Did I address all? Oh, timeline. The company won't commit funds until we have our CUP, which is obviously why we're here. The timeline right now is if we get the CUP, non-appealable CUP, in either March or April, we'll immediately get started. We think we will turn over the space, the work, doing landlord's work, we'll turn over the space sometime in the early fall, in that October time frame, at which point Studio Movie Grill will then take the space and they will build it into a theater. Well, obviously we have other work to do in the building, but Studio Movie Grill will start their work in the early fall. We anticipate that the theater will open sometime, and again, we're still working on the timeline, sometime in the summer to late summer of 19. And what I've been telling our folks internally, they say, Mark, give us a date. I'm saying Labor Day weekend. Obviously, we're going to try to improve on that if at all possible, but I think Labor Day weekend of 2019 is a reasonable time frame for us to do all the things we need to do. Obviously, we have to get the plans done and get all the building permits and all the things that we need to do. And I think that Labor Day weekend of 19 is a reasonable time frame for the theater to open.
great. And I think, Mark, you may have touched on this briefly, but just to confirm, there will be no change to the building footprint, correct?
There will be no change to the building footprint. The only change exterior that we see is if you've been to the building or the mall recently, you know that these along this berm here, which is a grade change from level 3 to level 2. There's some head-in parking spaces, and as I know you're aware, The code requires that we provide queuing for cars, one per theater. And so what we anticipate is taking a few of these head-in parking spaces and making that the queuing area. So when dad and mom drop their teenage kids off to watch the blockbuster movie and they come out and they can say, you know, son, daughter, when you come out, go to the left and we'll be here in the queue waiting for you. So that's the concept. Other than that, there will be no changes to the footprint. Everything that we do will be inside of the box that exists today.
Great. How do you feel the township would benefit from the proposed use if it was approved?
Well, obviously, there's a number of benefits. Bringing a movie theater generally is going to be a real benefit. I've talked to folks in the community, and they're talking about having to drive to different places to go to see movies. We're bringing one right to your front door, and so that's a real benefit. Obviously, from an employment standpoint, and I know you've seen the package that we've submitted. There's the Studio Movie Grill estimates that they're going to hire 250 people in various capacities to work at the theater, and so that's going to be a benefit to the community. Obviously, just the revenue that theater is going to generate, et cetera. It's going to improve the mall. It's just going to be a real amenity for the community. And I think you folks are going to be proud of it once we in Studio Movie Grill get it open.
Great. And you've touched on how the movie theater, if approved, would impact the township and the community. Obviously, it fits with the community's character. It's directly in line with Abington Township's comprehensive plan. Mark, we had some community meetings where we met with members of the community, and there were some, I wouldn't say concerns, but there were some issues raised. Maybe if you could just speak to some of the issues and how we've been working with the township and members of the community taking an active step to address those issues. Right,
and one of the things that happened was last night, we had the Planning Commission meeting where we presented our proposal and our plans, et cetera. A couple things came out of that. One intersection that seems to be very concerning is Cummings Avenue, Cummings Road or whatever, and Old Welch, an Old Welch Road. And what's interesting is, and we're waiting for Joe DeSantis, our traffic engineer, oh, Joe, you're here. Okay, great. And what's interesting is that the traffic report, Joe's traffic report, and then that report was sent to your traffic folks, and they looked at it as well. And the outcome of that is we're going to monitor that intersection once it gets open for about 6 months. And I know Joe's going to address this, and we're going to monitor that. And if there's changes, if we need to tweak that intersection or do something to it, then obviously we'll do it at that point. That's a concern that was raised. Folks talk about at the community meeting and other places where you're going to serve alcohol. Well, again, this is viewed as a restaurant. There will be a liquor license obtained, but the food curation is on the same level or better than a Cheesecake Factory. So from that standpoint, I mean, this is not a place where you come and all due respect, pound 80 beers. It's where you come and you have a drink with your meal or whatever, and then it's going to be a great operation. It's going to be a high quality operation. One of the things that Joe's going to touch on is the fact that the tickets can be bought and should be bought a lot of times in advance, which it's not going to be a place for kids to come and congregate. We don't see it that way, and Romaine's going to address the security issues. So one of the things that the community raised was security issues, and we've got a complete security plan that we've laid out in our community impact statement. We're fully prepared for every eventuality, and again, Romaine's going to go through some of that. There was a mention last night, and talked to Mark Pinnacal about it, the landscaping along the fence line that forms the north boundary. It would be this fence line here, where the houses abut the mall. We're going to take a close look at that. I've been in touch with our landscape architect, and we're going to engage them to take a look at that, see if some improvements can be made there. And generally speaking, we've covered all of our bases in terms of what we put in the community impact statement. We've been thinking through this, and again, obviously, as folks come and that you're going to testify tonight, and as they've come to the community meetings, et cetera, we're real sensitive to addressing any issues that you folks might have or that the community might have.
Right, and as Mark mentioned, we did have the community meeting. I believe Commissioner Luker was there,
and
as well as
Commissioner
Commissioner Myers.
Yes.
and also about, I'd say, 30 to 40 members of the community. So we've definitely been doing all we can to make sure that the township, the community members are happy with this proposal. Mark, is there anything else you feel the township should just generally be aware of? Anything else you'd like to say before we call the next witness?
I think, again, we've spelled it out in great detail in our community impact statement. We feel this is a great opportunity to improve the entertainment and restaurant aspects of the community, bring an amenity to the community that it doesn't otherwise have directly in the township. Rather than having to drive to places for movies, you can come a mile or so away and go to the movies. We just think it's just a great opportunity to not only improve the community, improve the mall, but just make it better for the citizens of the township, and that's why we're doing this project.
Great. We'd like to open it up to any questions that you have specifically for Mark. We'll also, certainly you're free to jump in at any time with any questions, but any specific questions based on what Mark has said so far? Nothing.
Okay.
Sir.
Commissioner Spiegelman?
Thank you, President Luker. Just two really technical questions, Mr. Gamble. The liquor license, you intend that to be a full liquor license, right? So not just a beer and wine, just a full...
Correct. It's going to be full service.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And this is also, again, I apologize, sort of an operations question. These 11 theaters they're going to be regular movie theaters as opposed to, say, IMAX or 3D offerings, or are you going to have any of that as well?
Correct. Joe's going to address this.
Gotcha.
They're going to be state of the art with all the bells and whistles. We've all been to the movies where you have the reclining seats. That's all part of this situation.
I like to recline watching movies. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right. Any other questions?
Commissioner Klein?
Yeah.
And Commissioner DiPlacido?
I don't know if you're the right person to ask, so tell me if I should
Okay.
wait. But who's going to address the deliveries of food, trucks, trash removal, dealing with any kind of noises from dumping things from the restaurant portion? Is that somebody else going to be addressing that?
Joe will address some of that in the operations section, and Romaine also with the trash and the servicing.
That's fine, then I'll hold off my question.
Commissioner DiPlacido?
Yeah, I had a question about the proposal in the section titled Security. Are you requesting an additional police officer for patrol from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m.?
We are not requesting an additional officer, but we feel like we will. The prime time for the movie theater operation, as we all know, is 7 to 11. You get those two, you get the 6:30 to 7:30 show, and then you get the 9:30 show or thereabouts. The concept that we've been working, there's really three ways that the security is going to be implemented here. Obviously, mall security, and we're going to step that up in that area during those times. Obviously, the peak times are going to be Fridays and Saturdays. So there'll be mall security. There'll be an additional, we think that we're going to engage an officer on special duty. We're already utilizing one officer. We're engaging an officer on special duty, and then the theater itself also has a security force implemented for their particular theater. So they'll have folks that will be there for their security. So you'll have three ways that it'll be covered. We're not going to bring a full-time police officer on to patrol the mall, but again, we talked to the police chief when we had the technical meeting that we had before. It was back in December. We talked it through with him, and he's supportive of us working with the police department to get to set up a situation where we're going to have special duty officers that can supplement and also adjuncts to the security force we already have.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Klein?
Follow up, because it does, Commissioner DiPlacido is correct. It says 7 p.m. to 3 p.m., and what it says is Abington Police Department, 1 police officer, special duty, parentheses, in addition to the APD officer already serving the mall.
Right.
So you are planning on having an additional officer?
Well, when I say additional officer, I mean someone on special duty.
Okay.
Sorry.
And will that be subsidized by the mall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my next question.
Commissioner Fahey?
Can you explain the difference between a regular police officer and a special duty police officer?
Someone who's off duty, who's not on regular patrol, that is who is acting on their own time.
Okay.
I'm assuming that the township's familiar with special duty officers. Yes.
It's called overtime.
Okay. It's called overtime. Overtime paid for by the mall.
So bottom line is there'll be a regular patrol officer plus an additional.
Correct.
That's
And
what That's what I extracted from the first meeting that we had.
That's correct.
On top of additional security by the mall.
And by the theater.
On top of the security that's supplied by the theater personnel themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. The off-duty police officers on special duty would be supplementing the security force we already have.
Right.
Just adding another layer of security.
Thank you.
And time paid by the mall.
Correct?
And the time paid by the mall.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Anytime you have special duty, whether you're guarding a construction site or the church asks you to direct traffic or whatever, that's all, that would be paid for by the entity asking for that assistance from the police force.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you. So you have other locations, so have you had difficulties with security and
No.
such?
In fact, Romaine's going to address this. This is her 11th mall that she's worked at
Okay.
as a manager, and she's had other malls where she's had theaters and has not had problems. We don't anticipate problems, but again, that's why they're problems, because sometimes they're not anticipated. But we're taking every precaution that we can take to make sure that this again is an amenity. It's a fun experience for the customers. And again, we all know how this works. There are bad apples in every barrel, but we're going to make sure that we minimize any effects that those folks might have. We're not going to let kids congregate outside the theater. Again, we're going to have security patrols going up and down in case people have car problems or whatever the situation might be. But it's going to be a safe, fun environment for the moving-going public. That's our intent.
Okay, thank you.
Just for point of clarification, residents who are here this evening, you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of the presenter's presentation. Okay, continue, sir.
Great.
Any other comments from commissioners? All right, if none, continue.
Great. And I think, just to clarify, Mark, I don't know if this was clear, but just to make sure everyone understands, I believe there's a police officer currently that is hired by the mall, correct?
That's
And
correct.
you're going to supplement with the additional officer?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so with that, we're going to transition actually into safety. I think it's appropriate at this time, given all the questions. So I'm going to call up Romaine Crawford, the current general manager of the Willow Grove Mall.
Before you start, council, would it be appropriate for comments to be taken from residents at this juncture, or should we wait to the conclusion?
No, you can wait till conclusion for public comments.
Okay.
How about questions?
Questions can be asked of the witnesses from anyone who has party status.
But before they move on to the next witness? Or?
It can be done with each witness, or it can be done after all of the witnesses have testified. Sometimes it may be in the best interest to let everyone testify, so we know exactly who's saying what, and then if anyone who has party status wants to ask a question, they'll know who to ask the question to.
Okay.
Right.
So
And we might answer some questions along the way as well.
Right. Okay, so based on that recommendation, we'll continue on with the presentation. Ms. Romaine Crawford,
Thank you.
Do you need to be, I think you need to be sworn.
could you,
Yes. Romaine Crawford Malay. It's Crawford Malay. CRAWFORD-MULLEY.
excuse me, Romaine, before you start, could you pull the microphone down to her?
Kind of short.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to speak generally about security at Willow Grove Park and some of the procedures that we use and the way that we plan for things like opening a theater. As was earlier stated, I have worked at a very large lifestyle center, regional mall, with a very large Regal theater complex. So I do have some experience working at a mall, managing it, and having a theater. And so does our director of security, Tyree Jones. He also has experience in security at a mall with a large theater. In the PREIT portfolio, PREIT is the company that I work for, PREIT Services actually, but there are many properties that have entertainment venues, theaters, Dave and Buster's. There's all kinds of large, and some of these are very new. Plymouth Meeting has a couple of very new concepts that just came online. And so we do have, as a company, a lot of experience looking at the security needs and planning for them and reacting. But bringing it back to Willow Grove Park, one of the things we did early on when this discussion began was to talk about how would we enhance security so that we would encompass that new area and we would not have a shortage on a peak Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. So we know that we would have to build in enhanced security, and right now there are 3 levels planned. We have Allied Universal, which is an outsourced security firm that we use throughout the portfolio, and they are our security force at the mall now. And that number that we use of security officers does ebb and flow depending on need. So it's not a fixed thing. We do, for instance, during the holiday season, we bring on more officers. We employ more officers. We also have more police services that we build into our budget. So basically, we would build in, going forward, knowing that the theater is opening at Labor Day, projected to open Labor Day of 2019, we would build in, so we would have the appropriate resources to have security there. We know that there are strategies that we would have to change in terms of patrolling. We know, again, from Tyrese Jones, our security director, his experience, my experience, we know that not only do you need, for instance, a car going up and down every lane, making sure that people are okay and entering their vehicles properly and all that, but you need to look at the platform where people enter, the entrances. This theater will have an internal entrance and external entrance. So we're already looking at those things now. In terms of young people, that came up last night, every regional mall, I would say almost every one, they have a large quantity of youth and teens who go to the malls on the weekend. That's just a fact of life. And so what we just do is, you're very lucky if you're in a situation like we are at Willow Grove, where you have the Abington police who are very skilled at dealing with the teens. They do get rowdy sometimes, but I've rarely seen it to a boiling point where anything is out of control. What I have witnessed more and more, which is very encouraging to me, is the police have a very good way of de-escalating, bringing people out of that emotionally charged state and basically getting people to listen to what the directions are and go home, go their separate ways. So I feel very comfortable with what I've heard about the Studio Movie Grill and their own security, which is the 3rd level. So we've got Allied Universal, we've got our Abington Police Department who respond in record time. As someone mentioned earlier, this is my number 11 property. I've been in marketing, leasing, and property management. And I have never seen, and I've lived in 6 states, I have never seen a police department as responsive as they are here in Abington Township. So it is really a pleasure to work with Deputy Chief Pat Malloy and Sean Williams and Officer Amatoro, because they really have a relationship with the team at the mall. And I think that gives us a leg up on a lot of other properties. So I'll stop talking now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Romaine, I know the question was brought up earlier from Commissioner Klein, I believe, regarding the deliveries and trash. Since you are the mall manager, maybe you could just touch on some of his concerns.
Certainly.
Some of his questions.
We have a master contract for trash in our company, which basically means there is one contract and then it is tailored in each property to those needs. So whether it's Studio Movie Grill or Cheesecake Factory, we all are using waste management, and we have the ability to control when they pick up, when they pull the compactors, the open top dumpsters. So we get to control all that, and we are very sensitive to the noise ordinance at the mall. We know that we have to be very strict about that. So I don't see that as an issue from my perspective.
So where are those located, the dumpsters?
Well, we have 4 different areas. We call them service courts. So we have 4, and they're all numbered, big bold numbers on the outside, and there are trash, meaning there are paper compactors for paper, cardboard, that kind of thing. And then we have some open tops for other types of trash. And we have containers.
Are they
with
stored
recycled
inside?
oil. I'm
Are
sorry.
they stored inside or under cover? How are they?
They're outside, but they're in basically alcoves.
Alcoves.
Yes.
Okay.
And it works well.
And then, I guess I'll ask my question of the operator later on.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
I was actually going to ask, what about deliveries?
Same thing. For instance, whenever we have a new tenant come to the mall, we always have what we call a pre-construction meeting or key handover. That's when we go down a checklist and we talk about things like you cannot have a delivery any earlier than 8 a.m. if it involves loud noises, bells and whistles and backup noises. We show them basically the white fence. And we say that we have lots of residents back there. We have residents on Old Welsh. You have to be very sensitive to that. So it's a conversation that we have with every single new tenant.
Okay. Any further questions for Ms. Crawford?
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to call our traffic engineer, Joe DeSantis. We also have a copy of Mr. DeSantis's CV. To the extent that anyone would like to see his professional qualifications. Great.
I will. Yep. Joseph DeSantis. DeSantis.
And Joe, if you could just describe the firm that you work with, or for rather, your address, your professional qualifications.
Certainly. Yeah, my name is Joe DeSantis. I'm president of McMahon Associates. We're a traffic and transportation engineering firm based in Fort Washington. We have over 150 employees in 9 offices in 4 states along the East Coast. Again, I serve as president, but my background is traffic engineering. I have 32 years in the field of traffic engineering and serving many municipalities, including a lot of the townships in eastern Montgomery County, Upper Moreland, Lower Moreland, Hatfield, Tolmans, and I'm their appointed traffic engineer. Again, I have a professional engineering degree, professional engineer's license in 6 states, a Bachelor of Science degree in engineering, and I'm also a professional traffic engineer certified by the Institute of Transportation Engineers.
Great, thanks, Joe. And you're familiar with the Willow Grove Mall, the area surrounding the mall where you performed the traffic study. Can you just confirm that?
Yes, I am very familiar.
And maybe if you could just speak quickly about the traffic study you conducted, touch on the methodology, your conclusions, and anything else that you think would benefit the board with respect to traffic.
Certainly. We conducted a traffic study last fall, presented it to the township dated December 1st, 2017, and we followed the standard methodology that's required by PennDOT and the Institute of Transportation Engineers in terms of analysis and methodologies. For this project, the key to the project is how much traffic would this type of development generate. And again, it's part of a mall. Now, the Willow Grove Mall is 1.1 million square feet. So in and of itself is a huge traffic generator. The movie theater itself is, oh, did I turn that off? Okay. Is simply occupying about 100,000 square feet of the 1.1 million square feet that's out there right now. So what we did was we took a look at that space is currently unoccupied, how much traffic would be generated if that 100,000 square feet was reoccupied as retail space compared to how much traffic would be generated as an 1,100 seat movie theater, and the remainder was 35,000 square feet of retail. We utilized trip generation data compiled and published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. That's the standard in the industry. And what we found was they essentially generate the same volume of traffic, about 100,000 square feet of retail within a 1 million square foot mall, generates about 200 cars during the peak hours. And that's primarily the afternoon, weekday afternoon and Saturday midday. The movie theater and the remaining retail space would generate about the same amount of traffic during those same peak hour periods. Where the movie theater differentiates itself is later at night. The volume for the movie theater is higher at night than would be for the retail if that space was reoccupied by retail. So what our analysis looked at were, the traffic flows around the mall, but we looked at the morning peak hour, the afternoon peak hour, Saturday midday, and Saturday evening. And what we found, again, because it's the same type of traffic during the commuter peak hours, the impact would be the same as if the existing space was just reoccupied. And again, all the driveways work at acceptable levels of service. There's some tweaks that we would discuss, but generally there is enough capacity, particularly the traffic signal here on Old Welsh Road. There's a lot of capacity at that intersection. So again, during the normal commuter peak hours, there's enough capacity at the driveways. During the Saturday evening, even though there's more traffic generated by the mall because of the movie theater, the traffic volumes around the site are lower. So again, there's enough capacity. So the conclusion was, the existing accesses do have the capacity to accommodate the change from retail space to a movie theater of 1,100 seats. What we did notice were there are some issues with traffic trying to turn left out of the driveway opposite Cummings because it's not signalized. We had talked about some different ideas there, and one of them would be, if you prohibited the left out and you just made it either right in, right out, or right in, right out, left in, and relocated that traffic to the traffic signal, what does that do? And what we found is the traffic signal has plenty of capacity and it could accommodate any shifting of traffic that we would do purposely. The conclusion, talking with Mark Penical and your traffic police officer and all, was leave the driveway the way it is, allow the movie theater to go into operation, and we'll examine it in 6 months, see how it's operating, and if we do need to make modifications to restrict turning movements at the unsignalized driveway, we would do that and adjust some of the signal timing at the other access, and it could easily accommodate the increased traffic. So that was our conclusion of our report, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Sure, any questions from the board? Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gillespie.
They are not the only two exits or entrances to the mall. Not everybody's going to be coming from Welsh Road, correct?
Right, and we're aware of that. What we looked at is comparing if the retail space simply reoccupied compared to if it's a movie theater. And the traffic volumes are essentially the same. We also know that there's plenty of capacity at this intersection to accommodate all of the increase in traffic. The reality of it is traffic will resort itself out. Some traffic will go out some of the other driveways, and some of the other driveways traffic will shift to that driveway. But the fact that we have enough capacity for the traffic coming in and out of the movie theater to be accommodated along Old Welsh Road tells us there's enough capacity at all the driveways. And again, if we need to do tweaks at the other driveways, we won't be willing to do that.
Okay, I mean, I'm basically thinking they're going to use all of them, so it's not like everybody's going to pour out onto Welsh Road, in my thoughts.
If you're coming from the east, you're going to come through the mall and go to the theater. Yes,
Yeah.
or come off Easton. Yeah, there's going to be multiple ways you're going to access.
Right,
Yes,
that's, yeah.
and from what Mr. DeSantis indicates, all of those intersections are fine.
Yes, okay. I'm just wanted to bring that, I'm sure everybody realized it, but it's like there's plenty of entrances and exits. Okay.
And one of the things just to be on a conservative side, we treated this as all new traffic, just to be conservative. The reality of it is there's going to be a lot of mixed-use trips. People are going to go to the mall and then just go to the movie theater, or they'll go to the movie theater and then go to the mall. So there probably won't be an actual full addition of what a mall, a standalone movie theater might generate because there's a mix of traffic that's already going to the mall. But in our analysis, we treat it as if it was all new traffic, just to be on the safe side, so.
From the first neighborhood meeting, I know Cummings Avenue and Old Welsh Road was brought up, and I think you discussed it last night. So the bottom line is you're going to reevaluate the whole traffic situation after 6 months and then see if there needs to be any changes made at that time.
Right, we're confident that the driveways can handle it all, but the applicant is willing to look at everything in 6 months, and if we need to make adjustments, we will.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Klein?
So what type of structure in the approval or would you be proposing that goes to bind you to that 6-month analysis and rectifying any issues that do occur?
I mean, it's pretty common in a lot of, I guess, land development agreements that are put together that there be a post-development study done and any modifications that are needed. I mean, it's typically part of the land development agreement that's put together, as I understand it. And
Yeah, and I believe the Planning Commission may have included that in their recommendation. At least that was discussed yesterday. Is that correct?
Right. Mike, how would you see that occurring?
If it's a condition that is being imposed, it would be in the conditional use approval, that if the board were to approve it this evening, that we would draft, and it would lay this out as one of the conditions.
Would an escrow be held back for the analysis of the township traffic engineer at that time?
If the board wants to,
Not for any assumed improvements. I'm talking about just for
doing the analysis. It can be made a condition, and that escrow would have to be part of the approval, and then they would have to post it for the study as you're referring to.
It should be noted that we've already made our deposit for the initial, and we've signed the agreement with the township about funding those types of things. So, as that escrow gets depleted, we can add additional funds to it. But we've already addressed that primarily with the township in terms of a separate agreement with the township. And in fact, I delivered the check tonight for the initial deposit.
Right, but I think that would cover you through the approval process that's currently going on now. Once you got the approvals, that escrow would traditionally be closed.
Well, but
what we're talking about would be holding maybe not the same portion, but a certain portion that would cover the ability for the township to have its own traffic engineer review the analysis done in 6 months.
Yeah, my suggestion is not close out the escrow until we're completely buttoned up.
That would be something that has to happen
Yeah.
between the lawyers. I'm not sure that can happen
Understood.
based on the agreement, but
once we've deposited the money, I think we're, again, we'll continue to fund as we deplete it, but we should have that covered.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think the takeaway is just that we're amenable to the escrow.
That's correct. We're willing to work with you on that. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
I think Commissioner Rothman had a question.
My concerns were addressed in the prior question and answer.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, proceed.
Great. I think that was everything from Joe. So now we're going to call up Joe Harburg. He is the head of real estate for Studio Movie Grill, who's the proposed tenant. He can certainly touch on the operations questions of Commissioner Klein. But first, I think he's just going to give some general background regarding SMG, so you can get a flavor for the type of amenity that the township would gain if the conditional use were approved. So.
Yes, sir. Joseph, Joseph, Harburg, Harberg.
Great.
Sure.
And Joe, if you could just describe just state your position, your professional address, and your professional history.
Sure. Head of real estate for Studio Movie Grill, 12404 North. Let's see, we just moved. It is. I'll get you the address. Dallas, Texas. Don't hold it against me. I'm kind of hiding the Dallas. Let's see. My position here. I've been here for a year at Studio Movie Grill. I've been in the real estate business for 31 years, representing retail and restaurant companies. I think I did my first deal at Willow Grove in the mid-'80s, if I remember correctly, with Sharper Image, and have done a bunch of deals at the mall. Love the mall. Great area, great mall, PREIT's a fantastic landlord, and we are really excited to put a movie theater here. The town needs it. We did our survey of the whole Philadelphia area, and there is a huge hole, and it sits right in the middle of your great town and right in the middle of that mall. So we're very excited the opportunity produced itself. Hate to see a fellow Dallas company, JCPenney, leave, but we're very happy to take advantage of the opportunity to go in. Studio Movie Grill is a very, very interesting business. It was actually founded 24 years ago by our owner, who is 48 years old, so it's the only thing he's ever done except for one other job that he had out of college, which was being Senator Arlen Specter's aide, driving him around for 2 years around Pennsylvania and Washington, D.C. And the whole concept of Studio Movie Grill was formed between, in a back and forth in the back of a car with Senator Specter. I think Brian has been to every county in Pennsylvania and met probably half the people in Pennsylvania driving around with the senator. And he loves Philadelphia, feels very comfortable here, lived downtown for a couple of years. And we do a lot of our real estate in areas that Brian likes to visit and has friends. So Philadelphia is very, very important to us as a growth area. I think it's very, Brian founded the entire concept of eating a food while you watch a first-run movie. There were actually 8 single-screen, second-run movie houses in the United States in 1993, 2, 3, 4, when Brian first came up with the idea of a multiplex first-run concept. Senator Specter and Brian went to one of those in Bethesda, Maryland, and that's kind of where the light bulb went off for Brian. And on his way back to California, he's originally a California kid, on his way back to California, he decided to work in all 8 of those theaters to ultimately get back to Los Angeles and start a first-run movie house. He got to the 8th one, which was in Dallas, and he ultimately bought it and started the concept out of that 8th house and never made it back to California to live. But it took him 4 years to convince the studios and the distribution houses to let him show a first-run movie while you were eating. And during that time frame, he really worked out the various issues associated with eating while you watch a movie. It seems fairly seamless when you go to one of these operations when they're done well, but it is an incredibly difficult company to operate at the store level. But we've got 24 years of experience doing it, and everyone has copied us since the very beginning. Movie Tavern is up here already. There's an Alamo Draft House, which is coming. There's iPick, if you've been in some of the other cities with iPick. We separate ourselves in a number of different ways. First of all, it is Brian's baby, and he has operated it continuously for 24 years. We have 30 locations from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. We are the 10th largest movie theater company in America by screen size and the 6th largest by volume in the U.S., by revenue. We are a part of a movement called conscious capitalism, where we believe very much in giving back to the communities that we work in. Roughly every sixth location, I'm charged with finding a theater opportunity in an area that's underserved by all communities, not just the theater community. So I can't really say Willow Grove is an underserved area because it's not really part of that conscious capitalism area. But we are in Upper Darby and have been operating there for several years with our full-blown theater operation, and we do very, very well. All 30 of our operations are cash flow positive and profitable almost from the day we open. But Upper Darby is one that we're very proud of. We're also in Chatham in South Chicago, and we're also in the epicenter in Charlotte, North Carolina. Matter of fact, when Charlotte had their problems a year and a half ago, we were the only building in that 3-block area that wasn't looted or hit, and we were the place where the police and the rioters came to negotiate the agreement to stop doing what they were doing. And so we feel very much a part of the communities that we're in. We do that in several ways. Every manager and their team picks a local community annually that they work with that's kind of the go-to in that area, go-to charity. Sometimes it's more than one, but they at least pick one charity that they work very closely with. We have national programs that involve lots of different community activities and groups. An example I gave last night is with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts have their cookies. I saw them at Willow Grove today, I think selling the cookies today. But the Boy Scouts sell popcorn. And I don't really think any of us want to take popcorn from kids who are taking their hands and shoving it in. So it really wasn't a very profitable deal for the Boy Scouts in Dallas. As part of our conscious capitalism program, we sell tickets to the Boy Scouts for $5 a piece, and they sell them to the community for $10 a piece, which is a little bit of a discount from the prices we charge in Dallas. We charge the same price that an AMC or a Regal or a Cinemark would charge. And the troops that were making about $1,200 a year on popcorn sales are averaging somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 a year in raising money selling movie tickets. So it's a win-win for everybody. That's what we mean by conscious capitalism. We also had a manager several years ago that was one of Brian's favorite managers who explained to Brian that he really doesn't do movies on the weekends with his family because he has 2 special needs kids who can't go to movies. They don't like dark rooms, they don't like loud noises, and this fantastic manager of a major movie theater in the country had never been with his family to a movie. So Brian immediately instituted a monthly plan where any special needs kid in the community and their siblings come for free with the family. And we, I think, have done over 1 million tickets last year of special needs kids and their families. We also employ special needs, and we do have a minority program. I know it was one of the questions last night, where we emulate the markets that we're in, but we do a lot of outreach, certainly when we start, to try to involve anybody that's capable of working in the theater. We're a heavy employer. We employ about 250 people. I think the department store before us probably had half that amount of employees in 3 times as much space. So we train, we teach, we help kids and young adults kind of reach their full potential working with us. We're a restaurant. We are kind of a cheesecake level restaurant. We aspire to be, I don't know if anybody's doing a Houston's restaurant, but that's usually the name we use, but Cheesecake Factory's just up there the same way. We operate like a restaurant. Our trash is the same as Houston's is. We work very closely with the mall to determine the hours for deliveries and how we get the food out where it doesn't impact what the public sees and smells and operates, and we work very hard on that, and that's part of the plan we've been working on for 4 or 5 months with PREIT to make sure that the back of the house is never seen. I mean, that's the whole purpose of opening hearts and minds one story at a time, which is our mission statement, is not letting them, trip over wires and trash and other things like that. So we're very careful to do that, and we operate first run, best of class opportunities. Our technology is the absolute latest in laser technology. We don't do IMAX, but we do equivalent SX technology. IMAX is just a brand that does a lot of advertising. Regal doesn't use them. A lot of people don't use them, but they're very well known. But that's the technology we employ in the big houses. We were the first, certainly among the first, but I believe the first movie theater chain to do reserved seating and the first movie theater chain to have recliner seats. We don't actually recline as much as we used to, because the biggest problem we have with recliner seats after you eat a big meal, people go to sleep. So snoring was a problem. So we don't do a full recliner. We do more of a 3/4 recliner. It's just as fun. When legs come up, it's great. But if you get back a little bit too far, we learned, you tip off. So that's the point. You don't want to do that. We're just like a Cheesecake Factory in terms of the liquor we sell. We're not a bar, so to speak. We do have a lobby bar where people are coming in and eating and drinking, but we don't really profess ourselves to be a bar people go hang out at. We're not a sports bar or something like that. But we do offer a full array. One of Brian's mantras is, we're movie for the masses. We don't upcharge for our tickets. Matter of fact, we'll be cheaper than probably everybody in the market. We don't have to, because we're a restaurant, so we don't have to rely on the ticket sales completely. So not charging the maximum amount or a premium for going there. And then our food and liquor is incredibly well priced. We believe we're a Cheesecake Factory level, but we charge just above or at what Chili's would charge for a hamburger or a salad. So it is very affordable for people to come in with their families and come back over and over again. Probably bring in 800,000 to 1 million people a year, or seats sold a year in each in this property, just like we do in some of our better properties. I think that's a good coverage of it. Did I miss a question?
Yeah, I know that there was another question from Commissioner Klein that he was holding. Maybe you could, I'm not sure if that was answered.
I guess the only question I have that was left out there from the manager of the mall, and I think some of it was already answered. One of the things we've had comments in previous applications for restaurants that have alcohol, restaurants that have liquor, is actually throwing out bottles and cans and dumping them. We've had some issues in the township where they make loud noises and late at night when they're clearing out the kitchen. But I believe most of that stuff would occur somewhat indoors or in a covered area.
Yeah, almost all service areas are covered or if not covered, they're certainly walled off and done. I think, I can't speak for every minimum wage person that may take the trash out, but we are as careful. They're all serve safe, qualified. We've gone through, everyone's trained in liquor and stuff. I don't know if the city has recycling, but we're a big recycling company. So we separate, we do things that, we don't do a lot of bottle beer. We do mostly draft. So the bottles and the cans, that's not what we do.
Right.
We do a lot to minimize noise in the restaurant because we're a theater and you're eating it's being served while you're watching a movie. We take the trash and everything else out pretty seriously as well. Deliveries and all that stuff we want to be a good part of the community, a community member.
And can you give me an idea of the split out? You said there's 250 employees, part-time, full-time?
9 managers, probably full-time. I think did we answer that one directly in the note? No. But I think it's probably, full-time is probably 50, but we're operating with 100 and some odd every single night. So part-time is kind of a weird question because we don't have normal 8 to 5 hours where, the theaters are different on Tuesday night, they're on Saturday, so there are a lot of part-timers that are working. I mean, there's 250 people that are employed that are working every week, but we're a long-hour company. We also do, I'm not trying to avoid the question, just kind of explain a little more to it. We do a lot of daytime corporate events. We're a great place to go, and I think the community also is missing that here too. We're almost like a hotel ballroom with our facilities. We cater food, we have food in the facilities, and all our theaters are completely Wi-Fi enabled, and they all have places where you can swing the table over and eat on the table, which you can easily put a laptop on and work. So a lot of seminars. We envision hopefully working with the Prudentials and the hospitals for training. We already work nationally with Google and Microsoft and companies like that to do their regional training in our facilities because you don't have to leave for dinner or for lunch and come back. We do it all in one place, and the screens we do WebExes from around the world, and it's a great training facility as well, which I think will help as well. But so the employment is up or down based on how much corporate work that week or not, but it's a very sophisticated system for having people come in and work.
Commissioner Schreiber.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Couple questions here. So the tickets, when somebody comes in with for a movie ticket, you were mentioning, or somebody was mentioning about going to maybe Cheesecake First or something like that. So there's no food requirement in that ticket?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so they can eat somewhere else, come in, just simply see a movie. How about the other way around? Can somebody come in just to eat and not see a movie?
Yes, what we've designed here is on that first level where our true lobby will be, there will be a lobby restaurant. We think the mall is underserved with food. Really, you have Friday's, Cheesecake Factory, and the food court. So we think another, a really American grill menu, hamburger salads, we do ahi tuna and things like that. We think that's going to serve really well. And so we've designed this in a way where you can come in, eat in the lobby bar and leave, or come into the theater, watch the movie and eat, or just come in and watch the movie.
Okay.
We have a limited, we don't have a concession stand like a normal movie theater, but you can
okay.
sit at the table and you can order popcorn, M&Ms, that kind of stuff. We have the,
To take in or to
they bring it
at
to
your
you.
seat?
You sit at the seat and they bring everything to you.
Oh, so, okay, so you don't ever get it sort of takeout, so to speak, and bring it to your seat yourself?
ma'am.
It's always ordered.
Right.
And as far as the people that are working there, are the people that are delivering the food working on tips, or are they salaried?
There is a tip system, but it's, we have runners, we have servers, we have managers, cook, obviously the kitchen's a totally different area, but it's like a restaurant, you could.
So they're making a lower wage, but then,
Then you get tipped, right?
Getting
But they're tipped well. It's a real volume restaurant, so they're getting a lot of volume, and yeah.
and then the people who are not working in that capacity, say they're people at the box office or whatever, are they
pool.
salaried?
Salary, and there's a tip pool, I believe, for
There's
them
a
as well.
tip pool,
Yeah.
the way that they do it? Okay, thank you, that answers.
Just to say, the average time the management is in we have, people say, how long have your people been working for you? Well, we've done 30 locations over 25 years, so there's not an average number of years we've been open. It's generally the management team has been there on average about a year less than the age of the store. So we've got stores that are 23 years old and the manager's been there 22 years. We've got stores that are 8 years old, the managers have been there 7 years. And we have a pent-up demand of places to place assistant managers that have been there 18 years and are looking for their own store now. So Brian is very big on family, community, and we take really good care of our management and our staff, and so they want to grow with us. We're primed for growing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hecker and then Spiegelman.
Thank you, President Lugar. A question about the liquor license itself. Is this something that the owners have in hand, or is this something where we would have to go through a process of them purchasing a license and requesting a transfer into the township?
Well, unless you've got one, which we'd love to get, we're
Well, I
out
didn't
looking
know
for one right now.
because the former Bravo Cucino, they served alcohol, so I didn't know how that played out.
Bravo owns their license, and that's one of the avenues we're pursuing.
Got it. Okay.
We're both working in conjunction trying to find one, so we'll get one.
But Commissioner Hager, if the license is being brought in from out of the township.
Yeah, we have to go through a
Then there
public
would be
process.
a hearing
Yeah.
process, yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Harbour, clearly somebody warned you that I snored, and I feel like I ruined the reclining seats for everybody, so my apologies.
You and I both do.
Follow up your answers to the employment-related questions of Commissioners Klein and Schreiber. The 250 employees, you said, 9 or so at management level. I know you said you'd like to hire extensively locally. Would there be local hiring opportunities both in the front of the house and back of the house for local folks to get into management early
Absolutely.
on? Okay.
Yep, and we're going to work with your community development director. I can't remember the gentleman's name we met last
Van
night.
Stryer, I think.
Van Stryer.
Van Struther.
Van Struther, yes, sir. He's going to, we're going to notify him before we do our job fairs, and he's going to help us get with all the various groups that he thinks we should meet. But we do that in every community anyway, but he offered his assistance, and we're more than happy to take it up.
Thank you very much.
I just thought of one other quick question. I think I saw this in your packet, though, but this is open for like morning movies as well as afternoon and evening?
Yeah, the movies generally start at 11. That's kind of the typical thing, and because we have a
morning movie person.
Yeah, well, that's great. Because we have, and there's a company called Movie Pass, which we can talk about afterwards. You should probably get a Movie Pass too, if you like movies a lot. But there's, with 11 screens, we program weekly. So if we know corporate events are coming up, we can dial it back in the morning or dial it up in the morning. So it's not a set 11 o'clock every day is Star Wars. It may alter, well, Star Wars would be all the time, but if something else would be, may change here or there in a time frame. But
So we can come in for breakfast as well as dinner? I think there was breakfast menu on it.
We do a breakfast menu, but I think that's more if people are coming in and renting the place, we can serve breakfast. I don't think that's actually breakfast, and we may serve breakfast in the mall out in the front. So that, if we find the need, we will definitely open early and serve breakfast if the mall needs breakfast. But, yeah.
Okay, Continue.
There's just one more thing that Mark had actually mentioned before that I think is important to bring up. But Mark talked about earlier the reserve seating system and how you purchase the tickets ahead of time. And I think it's important that the board know how that helps to curb any concerns related to alcohol consumption, underage,
Sure.
those sorts of things.
Well, we're having worked with Senator Specter and being on data management's very important for politicians to know who they're polling and who their people are and all that. Brian kind of got that information early on, and so we like data on our people. So one of the things he needed was to connect people that were buying food with the tickets they were buying. So he created the reserve seating system, which really is being used by everybody now. And what we found when we did that was it cut down and minimized a lot of sneaking in the movie theater that we used to do. I used to do when I was younger, sneak into, buy a Disney movie and show up at an R-rated movie. So now we know every seat that's been sold, and at the beginning of every screen we can walk in and say, these are the empty seats that are supposed to be there. They're full. That person probably shouldn't be there. So it's kind of a causal effect there. We also don't specifically program for teens. Now, we love teens to come in. It's the mall. We expect teens to be there. Not trying to tell them not to come to a movie. But we generally don't program, other than the blockbusters, we don't program it like a Regal or an AMC would to get people to come, kids to come all the time. We're really a family and then young adult up. So we're not programming specifically for that. So of course, we're going to have kids in the mall. They're going to come to the movies. Great. But I think that with the reserve seating system and with the fact that we're not showing a lot of the movies they would generally want to go to, we think we'll minimize a little of the outlay or problem that may happen.
Okay. Any further questions for Joe at this time?
Good.
Great. Okay. So at this time, I think we've concluded our presentation. As you can tell, we feel very strongly that the community will be gaining a very, very great amenity. Obviously, SMG is a great partner with the communities that it serves. PREIT is an excellent landlord. So at this time, we would like to open it up to either the board's more questions. Maybe you thought of things to ask Mark, Romaine, our traffic expert, or also, to the extent it's necessary or appropriate, we can open up now to the community.
Okay. Before we open it up for the community questions, are there any questions? Commissioner Vahey.
This is for the manager. This was before the planning commission last night, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. All right.
That is correct.
What was the recommendation of the planning commission?
Mr. Panical, since you attended.
Last night, both Abington Township Planning Commission and the representative from Montgomery County Planning Commission were at the meeting. There were 3 points that came out of there. The Planning Commission recommend approval of the conditional use application. There were 3 conditions, one of which was what you heard earlier about discussing and studying the Cummings Old York Road intersection within 6 months to a year of the facility opening. The second item was the additional landscaping along the shared property line with the Preston Avenue neighbors that are in Ward 5. The third condition from the Planning Commission was the applicant's commitment to contact Van Strothers prior to any job fairs that would be conducted. And then the fourth recommendation was from Montgomery County Planning Commission. And Mike Narkowitz's recommendation was that crosswalks be installed at the intersection, the signalized intersection of Reservoir Avenue, Old Welsh Road, and also that the applicant look at installing crosswalks on site in and around the drop-off points and the parking fields for the new facility. That's what I have for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I do.
Yes, sir.
So along those lines of the landscape buffer, within the new zoning ordinance that we have, there's different intensities of landscape buffers. Would you be willing to look into either incorporating the requirements for the high or medium intensity buffers? up against the residential properties?
What we committed to last night is we're going to engage our landscape architect to review the situation and also to review the code to see what's required. And then we're going to make a decision based on that.
Okay.
Any other questions of commissioners?
Mark had a comment.
So,
Mark?
I apologize to the Commissioner. The existing buffer that's out there actually has elements of the medium intensity screen buffer. There is a solid PVC fencing, approximately 7 feet high, that separate the mall's property from the neighbors along the Preston Avenue side. And then in addition to that, I believe the existing buffer is 25 feet high. The issue that we had with the existing buffer is that the original planning of that buffer was in the late 1970s and 80s when the mall was developed. Over the years, there's been some attrition to the trees that were out there. Many of them were white pines, as you're familiar. They don't do well in heavy winters. That was the commitment from the applicant to engage a landscape architect.
And potentially repopulate it back to the medium intensity buffer?
That would be the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Myers?
Not a question, but crosswalk in the resident meeting, crosswalks came up. And I'm not sure who would take the initiative on that, because the crosswalk that was discussed is on Old Welsh Road, which is a state road. So we did strongly feel, both President Luker and I, that that was a good suggestion and that one that should be pursued. So I'm not sure if that's the township that takes that initiative, the mall. I'm asking.
Joe, what do you think in terms of how that would be handled?
I mean, sometimes it's done by the applicant, sometimes it's done by the township, so it can be done either way, however.
We would just,
I'm sorry.
we would just.
Yeah, sometimes it's done by the applicant, sometimes it's done by the township. It's really how the board would like it to go, so. It would require PennDOT approval, but that's.
Mr. Manfredi?
You can craft whatever conditions that you would like. If you'd like a landscape plan to be designed to the township's satisfaction, a crosswalk and sidewalk plan, again, to the satisfaction of the township administration and the solicitor. So whichever you want attached as conditions, I apologize if you can't hear me, but whatever conditions you want attached, they can be attached to the approval of this conditional approval. It's just how you word it. So if, in other words, you would like to have crosswalks done to our standards, obviously we do want, Mr. Micolo or Angelo involved, but it could be to the traffic engineer, it could be done by us, as their traffic engineer said. I would say, put a condition that if you want crosswalks, that meets the township's approval. Very simple.
And that came as, Mark, that came at the recommendation of the Planning Commission last night?
Montgomery County Planning Commission.
Okay.
The only thing I would recommend is that the condition, if you want them to investigate and if they get PennDOT approval and then they'd be required to install the crosswalks, you can do that as a condition. The only thing I would recommend is make sure that it's clear that if they can't get PennDOT approval, they're not held up by the fact that they can't meet this condition. So obviously, if PennDOT says, no, we're not going to let you put a crosswalk on this particular street, the applicant shouldn't then be prevented from moving forward.
So let me get the, okay, let's go with Commissioner Beatty first.
Point of clarification, where exactly will the crosswalk be from across Old Welsh at the Reservoir Avenue intersection?
Yes.
Right. Sir, could you reiterate where that crosswalk would be? Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a traffic signal at Reservoir.
Reservoir and Old Welsh?
Yeah, and I believe one or two of the crossings there's no ped crossing signs. You'd have to petition PennDOT to allow you to put a crosswalk.
So there is actually no real pedestrian access once you cross Old Welsh to the mall itself. You're just walking through the parking lot. Is that what the Montgomery County Planning Commission was commenting on?
The
One, there is no crosswalk at that intersection now within the public right-of-way. There are internal sidewalks to the mall once you get onto the property, but once you get to the ring road, there's no crosswalks whatsoever.
Correct.
So you're at the mercy of the parking lot at that point. So the County Planning Commission, Mr. Narkowitz in particular, his recommendation was that the applicant look at the internal layout of the parking fields to create safe pedestrian access within their own parking lot.
Okay.
And PennDOT has nothing to do with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, I'll take this opportunity to open it up for public questions and/or comments. If you would, come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and if you would kindly keep your comments within a 3-minute time frame, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to express myself as a citizen. My name is Vincent Tack, that's spelled T-K-A-C. My address is 1844 Chester Avenue, that's zip 19001. I am a 35-year-plus resident of Abington. I sent all 3 of my children to the wonderful Abington Public Schools, and my wife and I plan to retire in place. First, let me say this, that I think PREIT has been a very good corporate citizen. I don't know a lot about Studio Movie Grill. It's a private company, and it's very hard to research. My concern is that even after the presentation tonight, I don't really understand the format, the operation. For example, our alcohol is going to be permitted in the theater itself? That's an open question to my mind. I don't know whether you commissioners have grasped that, but if so, it seems to me that raises to a higher level the need for patrolling that alcohol does not get into the hands of minors. And the other thing that I think that I was disappointed at is that nothing in the presentation tonight, none of the public material that I've had available to me, drills down to the very real security issues that are raised by a movie theater. Unfortunately, the state of our country is that a week doesn't go by where there isn't an active shooter incident. We all have the memory of the horror that happened in Aurora, Colorado. That was not the only theater shooting. There were theater shootings in Lafayette, Louisiana, and in Nashville, and in Renton, Washington. And I've heard nothing tonight about security plans for that type of catastrophic occurrence. I do know, I'm a proud graduate of the Abington Police Academy. I know that our very well, highly skilled, very well trained tactical forces do train in Willow Grove Mall on occasion, but I've heard nothing about tonight about how they're going to coordinate with either PREIT management or Studio Movie Grill. I really think it's incumbent upon you as commissioners to drill down to that level of detail. I'm particularly concerned, if I picked up correctly, that in fact, if the existing liquor license of the exiting restaurant is simply transferred, that there isn't, I'm not going to get another shot at this. There's not going to be another hearing at which we can focus on alcohol and young people. Having said that, I'm not hostile, but I would like to get tonight some assurances in the following regard. And I have two suggestions. Because I do know that on the internet that Studio Movie Grill has applications for community functions that they will fund. And I would like to suggest two. I would suggest that they fund a program on responsible drinking at Penn State Abington. We are beginning to become a college town now that we have a very large residential facility across from the library. And then second, I think that, the menu, which I think took up about half of the public material that was available, the menu is what we all want to eat on a weekend. But it's I think, incumbent upon them. I'd like to see a corporate sponsorship of the nutritionists from Abington Hospital, or maybe nutrition students at one of our local universities, present a series at the Willow Grove Mall on good nutrition. Just a couple of other remarks, and these have to do with personal interests of mine. My cardiologist would not forgive me if I didn't mention that I would hope that they will amply supply their theater with defibrillators and have trained their personnel with those defibrillators. And I would also like to know what their policy, the policy of Studio Movie Grill, is towards employing formerly incarcerated, most specifically felons, who are making a good faith effort to transition back into society. With that, I'll conclude. I do want to say this, that I think that, yes, I'm not in opposition of the conditional zoning that's being requested tonight, but I do feel it's incumbent at this point to pin down both PREIT and this new entrance into the market, Studio Movie Grill, as to how they're going to fulfill those corporate responsibilities that I've tried to detail tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Instead of trying to answer all, did you want to say something, sir?
Let me say one thing.
I don't know if you wanted to address all of his points.
I don't know if I can address all of them, but I can address some of them. The head of our security group is a former senior officer of the Secret Service. We, too, take very seriously the whole issue around security in a movie theater, and we have our plans. We're just starting to work with the mall. We will be very integrated between what the mall manager's already described and what we do ourselves in the deal. And we have not had a situation at our theaters. I think the only situation at one of our theaters in 24 years was something went bad in the parking lot, and somebody was shot in the parking lot and came in to the theater asking for help, but we've never had a problem in the theater itself with any issues like that. And part of it's because we have a very good plan, everyone's trained in it, and we'll work very closely with the mall and the police department to make sure that things are done to make sure that that isn't a problem. I've got 2 passes for you to go to Upper Darby. You can see what the experience is like, so you'll get to experience what alcohol and eating is in a theater. I think you'll find it fun. I think you'll be a great customer of ours when we open. And we do take seriously all of the things that you're talking about, and I will take it up the line and say we should work with people. I think we do employ federal ex-prisoners. I mean, this is a very, very peculiar give-back company, and it's owned by one guy, and he's 48 years old, but it's all he's done. So he's effectively an old millennial when it comes to working with the community and working with people to make sure the communities are better off where we serve. So we'll do that, and we will employ a lot of kids if they go to school at UPenn here. We will absolutely employ them because that's our best source of people who work at our stores is college students and university students. So,
thank you. Any other comments from residents? Comments from residents. Name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Devon McCoy. That's D-E-V-A-N-E, McCoy, M-C-C-O-Y. My thing, 2728 Old Walsh Road, Willow Grove. I live right on Old Walsh Road, and you were saying that it's not going to be more traffic. I beg to differ, it will be more traffic. For one thing, it was Penny's, which is a retail there wasn't as many people going there. If it was, it wouldn't be going out of business, as if you have a movie theater there, because more people will be going there, definitely. Plus, you were saying that they're going to do corporations, they're going to have different things going on, so there definitely will be more traffic. I live between the mall and Fitzwater Town Road. There is a lot of traffic that come down there because even I use it for a shortcut. It's easy to come through the mall and make that right to go down to Fitzwater to turn to Susquehanna or to Moreland Road. So my question is, please take a check and look at the traffic because it will be, and there's a lot of residents. One thing about Willow Grove Mall, there is a lot of residents around there on Old Welsh, especially Old Welsh Road. And another thing is, since there's going to be a lot of food and stuff, what about heavy trucks? Could you make it where the heavy trucks would not come towards Fitzwater Town, maybe come off of Eastern Road, because there's one lane going and one lane coming back, and it's kind of difficult for us who live in that area to get out, and the heavy trucks for food, trash, and all that, can they come in the other way? Take into consideration, please, the people who live within there for trucks going back and forth. Because we did have a little problem with the gas leak. They put new pipes in, let's hope it fixed it, but from the heavy traffic on Old Welsh Road, it really caused a problem. It really did. When I first moved here, SEPTA used to come down there, we got together, and SEPTA doesn't come down Old Welsh Road. Now they go the other way. Okay, what was the other one? Wait a minute. Wait. What time is the latest that the theater let out? The latest show?
We do run some movies at midnight on weekends.
Okay. As far as security, would Abington be putting out more money for security for the police to be patrolling? You said it'd be one, but would there still be somebody working overtime? It would be more? No?
I could probably address that just briefly. I just want to step over.
Could you come to the microphone with me? Thank you.
I just want to share, and hopefully it will make you feel more comfortable. One of the things that I have noticed, and I'm almost 4 years at this mall, we actually have, like for instance, I'll give you a good example. A week ago, we hired 2 additional security officers, just to keep an eye on a situation that we hope would not unfold. When I went down to look at that space, there were 4 people. So there were 3 police officers, and then there was someone else just stopping by. That's the kind of attention that we get. People really do look out for that mall who are in the police department. So all I can say is, even though we might employ, in terms of the extra hours, police services, 1 person, we are often told, don't worry about it. Once we communicate what's going on, and you will see that flow, people just coming by, checking, making sure everything's good. So that's why I feel that we'll be okay.
The reason I say, because I'm concerned, because this does sound like a good deal. It sounds very nice, really it does. We're going to have more people coming from outside of our area. Because like you said, in Philadelphia, there's not too many movies there. So there's going to be more people congregating and coming to the movie theater, so there'll be more traffic. And for us who live on Old Welsh Road, that traffic and people coming back and forth could be very disturbing. That's why I was wondering about, would you keep an eye out with the traffic and everything? And you say you will do that, please stay fast on that. You know, could you take it into concern for us who live on Old Welsh Road, that traffic going back and forth? It is, people do use that. You say they don't, but oh yes they do, because I live there. It's easier to come down that way than to go back towards Eastern Road. It really, really is. And you're really working for the community, you really do all that. Please keep in mind senior citizens. Could you give us a discount? Okay? I mean a nice discount, not 50 cents like the Regal, but a nice one. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McCoy, you do bring up a good point. Deliveries of those large trucks, especially those 18-wheelers, I think if we can prohibit them from using Old Welsh Road, because you have a school zone there and a one-lane highway going to Fitzwatertown Road. But if we can make arrangements for delivery trucks to come off of Moreland Road
Yes.
or some other, I guess Moreland Road more so than Old
Can that
Welsh
be
Road.
done? Because there's really them trucks for the trash, it's heavy, food delivery, it's really, it's not very,
Plus a school zone with a one-lane highway.
it's
I
one
think
way
would be-
going and one way coming.
But respect, go ahead.
Our only comment, I think, with that is definitely, you know, we're concerned for the community and we want everyone to be safe and not disturbed by the trucks. But I would just ask that the board consider, you know, the difference that the movie theater would bring heavy truck-wise as opposed to another tenant. Is that an issue that's really specific to this particular use? Which I think is the reason we're here tonight. I mean, perhaps, I'm not an operations person. Perhaps the restaurant might require more deliveries of food. But I would just, you know, maybe that's something for the business folks to discuss. But I, from a legal perspective, I would just like the board to consider that perhaps that is not a specific concern for this particular conditional use. But
It's a concern for us as the neighbors on that street.
No,
And they don't have to come up from Fitzwatertown to, they can come right down Eastern Road, make a left or make a right, or come down Moreland Road. Because there's, two-lane traffic each way. There's no problem. They do not have to come from that way. And I'm concerned about it because of our homes, the shaking of the foundation. So it's not too much to have them come down Moreland Road or Eastern Road. They don't have to come down Fitzwater, down to Old Welsh Road. So it is a concern.
Right.
And it's not too much to ask, and it's not putting too much on you.
we certainly acknowledge that. Like I mentioned, I'm just not sure that a movie theater, as opposed to say if the Pennies was still operating, I'm not sure if the truck use.
Even with
might-
Pennies, they didn't have no trucks come down that way. I've been living there, I can tell you that.
Okay.
So could y'all take that, please, commissioners? Make sure you work on that.
Furthermore, I'm not sure how I'm not sure that the mall is in a position to control, independent trucking companies.
You can make a recommendation. If they want your money and they're making deliveries for you, they will do as you ask. I mean, instead of, it's not, you may not even that much gas to go the other way.
Okay, Ms. McCoy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments?
President Luker,
Yes, ma'am.
can we make the promise, since this affects both of our wards on Old Welsh Road, can we make the promise to you, Devon, that we will be working with the mall and all of the deliveries to minimize the traffic on Old Welsh Road down to Fitzwatertown? This resident is absolutely correct, and further down from the mall, in an area that we have discussed in the past, where the homes are quite close to the road, and it is only 2 lanes, and they're narrow. They're within legal limits, but they're narrow, and the homes do feel the vibration of heavy equipment, heavy trucking.
And more importantly, there's a school zone there.
We understand,
and it
but
is a school zone, and and to complicate things, it's an offset intersection at Coolidge.
your first issue, though, is going to be how are you going to tell, unless they turn into the mall, there's trucks on that road, you're not going to be able to tell they're going to the mall. Again, Tyler's point's well taken. All due respect to the commissioners, there might be one U.S. food truck or Cisco truck that delivers to the movie theater versus other trucks that are on the road or whatever. Respectfully, this is probably not the way, I mean, a conditional use permit for this movie theater is probably not the vehicle that you're looking for to solve whatever issue it is that you may be facing with regard to the road.
I wasn't suggesting, I don't think anybody's suggesting that we make this a condition of this. We are just making this a general promise to our residents for the entire mall. And because you're here, it does bring attention to the mall. We are going to make the promise to work on this with the mall. We certainly did it with SEPTA and the SEPTA buses, and we can do this with the trucking companies and the delivery companies.
Well, we can sorry.
No, it was just somebody moving the microphone.
Oh, I mean, we can certainly have some conversations, but it sounds like almost more of a township issue than it would be a mall issue. But we're willing to look into it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from residents? Comments or questions? All right, if there are none, I'll take any closing comments or questions from commissioners. And then I have a question of Manager Manfredi and council. There's not a motion for us to vote on this evening. There's a recommendation for board action. So how do we proceed at this juncture?
First, I believe Commissioner Myers had her hand raised.
I just wanted to say a couple of closing comments. Having been to the resident meeting and the planning commission meeting last night, and also can speak from personal experience, the mall has been a very good neighbor, and I think that it's safe to say that if any problems do arise, we're certainly not going to know for quite some time until Labor Day of 2019. But if any problems do arise, we have a wonderful open dialogue with the mall, and I know that we can work them out.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we close the hearing, my question is, I don't see on our agenda a motion.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So this is a recommendation to pass it on to the full board?
No.
No, this is the full board.
No,
We're gonna make a motion today.
this is either a motion to approve
Okay.
the conditional use application with the conditions as outlined during the hearing, or to deny the conditional use application. If the board votes in the affirmative or in the negative, then we will get the transcript and we will produce the written opinion, which will lay out all of the conditions that have been outlined this evening, the specific conditions that have been outlined this evening. I do want to, maybe not wanting to totally go into this hornet's nest at the moment, but I think it's important to point out that the questions regarding trying to work on traffic, trying to limit truck traffic, that is not something that you can make a condition of this approval, that they don't use certain roads for heavy truck traffic. It's not something that's an appropriate condition we put on this. I think the mall's offer or promise to try to work on that and to try to look and see what they can do can be something that can be referenced in the opinion, but it cannot be a condition of approval.
Okay, so for point of clarification, we can only make this motion or vote on this motion based on the conditions that were agreed to by last night's planning commission and the Montgomery County Planning Commission?
No, by the conditions that have been referenced tonight during the hearing.
Okay.
If those are the ones that the board wants to, if those are the ones that the board wants to place on the applicant, and that includes the landscaping and the crosswalks. And I think the manager was also was writing some of them down as we were speaking. But that's why luckily we have the transcript.
Okay.
There will be a distinction, President Luker, between traffic issues such as what were raised about all traffic at entrances if deemed necessary. So when the applicant says that we were happy to take a look at all of the traffic at all of the entrances, that can be incorporated into it. But you can't distinguish between which roads you're going to, what kind of traffic. I think what we heard them say is that they're more than happy to work with the township on traffic issues. You just can't make it a condition of the approval. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
I have a question from Commissioner Rothman.
Everyone may not agree with me, but I think for the sake of making it clear what we may be voting on and as to what we are actually able to control, because there are some things concerning crosswalks that may not be within our control as a township, et cetera, I think it may be worthwhile for us to quickly run through what those conditions are.
Right, and we had that same concern. Perhaps, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Okay.
So we can run through them.
Go ahead, Steve. Commissioner
I
Connell.
think I have a good list here. So the first condition was conducting a traffic study after 6 months of full operation of the movie theater.
Specific to the one intersection.
Specific to the intersection at Cummings.
Correct.
And at the same time that a separate escrow would be set up for the township's review of the applicant's traffic study done at that time.
Right.
That the applicant will work on a highway occupancy permit to install crosswalks at Reservoir Avenue, and but is not tied to that condition if PennDOT does not approve the crosswalks.
Right, we'll make a good faith effort to
Right.
look into that, but we would like that to not hold up the process. Certainly, we don't want to go down a road where we look into this for 6 months and then we're denied and then we're,
That's
out
what
of
I
luck.
think. I
Correct.
think that
You
was
just,
the
you just said that.
That was the
Correct, correct.
recommendation, right?
No,
So,
I was just clarifying.
Yep, that's Reservoir and Old Welch, correct?
Reservoir and Old Welsh, yes. That the buffers up against the residential properties overlooking the parking field would be repopulated to a medium intensity as stipulated in the zoning ordinance. That you will look into internal crosswalks for better pedestrian traffic to the movie theater.
I'm sorry, can we get just a little more clarity there? Sort of what the board is looking for? I mean, as we understand it, once again, there might not be much difference between someone parking in the parking lot and walking into the Pennies as opposed to the movie theater. So maybe just if you could add some specificity around what that condition would entail.
Where you would like to see those crosswalks?
Right.
What's that?
Where you would like to see the crosswalks?
That's within the current parking field, correct?
I mean, personally
Commissioner
speaking,
Klein.
and I wasn't at the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you may want to consider language as similar to what I mentioned before, that internal pedestrian pathways in the parking field, designed to the specifications and approved by the township.
But
I
only
think they're still
regarding.
gonna- But I think they're still going to ask the same question as to
Right,
where
right,
it
right.
would be located. I mean, they could, if we leave it generalized, I think the question should be
Well, you can
what the planning commission spoke about at their meeting last night.
We didn't, that wasn't covered as far as I recall last night.
wasn't
Internal.
the specific-
No, that was Mr. Narkowich's from Montgomery County Planning Commission, our planner's comment.
But not internal, that was external. That was on the roadways, not internal.
Not at the planning commission meeting. So to me, if the commissioners wanted to incorporate the recommendations of the planning commission, they can also incorporate certain recommendations of the township planner.
Okay,
who
respectfully
that
though, I
would
mean,
be.
we're not looking at a mall-wide crosswalk
No, I
plan.
understand
So what
Correct.
we're looking for is, specifically, if you want to point out, all due respect, if you want to point out to us where you'd like to see crosswalks, then we can implement those or try.
I think it would behoove us to have crosswalks internally on your driveway at the reservoir intersection, because that is where the traffic light is, as well as people entering to make lefts and rights, and possibly one crosswalk down at the Cummings Avenue entrance.
So, and once again, just to clarify, those are internal crosswalks within the current parking field.
Correct.
We're not talking about external cross.
I wouldn't even take it as far as the parking field. I would take it for across the driveway. The driveway that I'm talking about is the one that surrounds the entire mall, that if I wanted to make a circle around the entire mall, in the mall, that driveway.
Can we, if you bear with me, can you show us on the plan? That'd be great. I was just going to ask that question. I believe we're talking right here,
We're talking crosswalks right here, this is Reservoir here. This would be crosswalks here to Reservoir. I think we're also talking crosswalks, people cross here, and I think we're talking crosswalks here and crosswalks here on your drive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And
So-
they can make any.
Right, so maybe we're just trying, I think, to grasp a distinction between internal crosswalks, external crosswalks. I think we were under the impression initially that you would want some sort of modification to the parking field, which, that would be a very steep ask,
Understood.
respectfully. But I think what Ms. Myers said, Mark, feel free to jump in. I think that's reasonable if we can think of a way to properly specify that.
Right, so there would be two, so I think.
I count three. I count one external at Reservoir and Old Welch, which is subject to PennDOT.
One condition, you're talking about conditions?
Yes.
One
And then-
condition, right?
And then two other ones, internal, one at Reservoir and one at Cummings at the end of the driveways going across our ring road.
As Commissioner Myers described on the plan.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. So I count 3 that we have to look into.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
And only one would require the PennDOT approval.
That, right.
Correct.
The internal ones would
Got
not,
it.
obviously.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
and I believe those are the conditions that we had discussed. I don't know if anybody else has anything
Mr. Vice President.
to that.
Commissioner Vahey.
I believe we're going to work with Van Schroeder
Correct.
for employment.
Yes, that's correct as well. We agreed yesterday at the meeting to reach out.
Oh, no, that can't be a condition of
That's not a
conditional use
condition part of the
approval.
conditional
No,
use hearing.
no.
That's not part of our.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But we can promise in good faith, we're going to use all the avenues that we can find to make sure that Studio Movie Grill gets the high-quality talent they need to staff their theater.
And to clarify, it would be Mr. Strother in his individual capacity, not as his official capacity.
Right, we understand.
Okay.
Commissioner Thompson, you have a question?
Just a quick point of clarification here. To the young lady's point in the back of the room that was talking about truck traffic on Old Walsh Road. We certainly can't control that, but I'm wondering if PREIT might be able to look into some signage to restrict truck traffic from entering the mall property at those locations off of Old Walsh.
We'll certainly look into it.
Okay.
I mean, I think, respectfully, I envision this as maybe more of a conversation that Romaine and her staff have with the tenants, and especially, she has a relationship with the managers, having conversations with the managers and saying, you know, when trucks are showing up at XYZ hours and making sure that they're complying with what's reasonable, not what's going to be, you know, early mornings or being on the road at the wrong time or coming in Old Welch versus Easton or another way. So I think that's a conversation that maybe needs to be had.
Okay.
So with that,
Manager Manfredi.
Do you want to go through?
I was gonna make a motion if we're, if there's anything else.
Did you incorporate in recommendations of the planning commission, or you're not going to do that?
Well, I think we handled
I think those are
we handled the recommendations of
the ones that are
planning commission
on
through the conditions.
Yes,
Right.
that's our understanding.
Am I correct, Mark? Is there anything else outstanding from the planning commission that you think we're not missing? Thank you.
Okay.
So I guess I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use application for Studio Movie Grill to be located at the Willow Grove Park Mall with the conditions as discussed, and I'll briefly, for the record, say that the traffic study, 6 months, and the escrow issue at Reservoir, the crosswalks at Reservoir that would be, need to get PennDOT approval, but would not be required, but you will make the effort to get PennDOT approval for those. The buffer going to a median intensity up against the property, the residential properties overlooking the parking field, and then the 2 internal crosswalk locations that Commissioner Meyer spoke about, which was at Reservoir and Cummings. And I so move.
Second.
You've heard the motion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Question?
Addressing the traffic at all the entrances after a period of time if the traffic flow changed?
I said that in the front, at the beginning.
At all entrances?
This is the Cummings Road, Cummings Avenue.
Not just one, but all. I just want to make sure, because
That's a good point. I think we did agree that it would include all.
I think
And
last night at the,
with the 6-month follow-up study, it would include all entrances?
No, it was only regarding Cummings and Old Welch.
It's only those
right,
two.
that's the problematic intersection that was identified by both, I believe, the township's engineer and ours.
Permission DeSantis, all the other ones should handle the traffic fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're okay? All right, you've heard the motion. Let's try this again. We've heard the motion. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Can I get one clarification, just from, I'm sorry, thank you for the approval, but in terms of the buff, in terms.
No, you voted. Any clarification is going to have to come afterwards with staff. The board's just voted.
Okay, all right, that's
The
fine.
record's-
I had a question.
The
but that's
record's
okay.
now complete, and we can.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I had a question, but I'll defer to staff.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. So that concludes the hearing this evening. We thank you all for attending. Thank you.
What was your question?
Just how extensive? It says overlooking parking. Can we just say that it's just in a certain area, or do